Let me take the pen out of my pocket. I've been out today working with St. Vincent de Paul, visiting people who needed a little bit of help. So welcome, everybody. So great to see you. Let me close this blind over here. So we got, there we go. Make it a little bit darker. I do have my mic on. I do have the light on. I mean, everything looks good. So we're doing pretty good. In case you just missed it, we had a fantastic discussion on Gil's channel and Gray Man Prepping, and he was talking about fencing, especially in a home defense situation. So kind of a continuation off of what we were talking about last week, and really good discussions, some really good ideas about fencing. They even talked about electrified fencing, and so just some good information about how you can protect your home or your homestead in a post-apocalyptic world. Hello, Diana too. Hello, Sue Me. Welcome. And Muskoka Oma, I think I've already said hi, but I will again, just in case, just to make sure. Utah Mike, good evening. So everybody looks like they're coming over from Gil's channel. I'm going to choose not to monetize this so that hopefully we don't get it kicked off of YouTube, at least this one segment, because we're going to be talking about firearms. And they really don't like us talking about firearms. So I'm not even going to ask that it be monetized. That would probably be suicidal. Hello, Laura. How are you? And the other thing is they have very strict rules. So I can't show knives or weapons or firearms on a live. So if I had recorded this and then sent it as a recording, that's fine. But I think they're afraid of somebody doing something with a weapon while people are watching, and that, I guess that kind of makes sense, but I don't know how they monitor it when you're alive. Hello, Laura Minion. By the way, I did find my Rat 2, my Ontario Knife Company Rat 2. When I came in from the church Sunday, I put everything on the buffet over there, and so my left pocket and my right pocket got together, and then in between a stack of papers and my missile, my Ontario Rat 2 got kind of stuck up this way. So I just grabbed everything, put it in my pocket, missed it. And so I almost had a heart attack last night when I thought I'd lost it. That's one of my favorite knives. But anyhow, had a terrible night last night. Don't know what's going on. Almost had to go to the ER. Diana, too, welcome. So if I get short of breath, please forgive me. I'll have to do something real quick. But anyhow, I've been having the coughs like you would not believe, producing a lot of phlegm. And so I had to go last night and get on my oxygen concentrator and take some breathing treatments and everything else. And in the middle of the night, I woke up and just felt like poo-poo. And my blood oxygen was at 86%. So then I did another breathing treatment, went back on the oxygen, came back in about a half hour later, and it was up to 93, which is good. As long as it's over 90, I don't have to go to the hospital. So was very happy with that. So we've been above 90 the rest of the day. So I may sound out of breath. I may cough a little bit during whatever's going on during our discussion tonight. I apologize for that in advance. That's the after effects of over 40 years of smoking. It destroys your lungs, and I wish I knew then what I know now, but we learn as life goes on, and you learn, you accept, and you make do with what you've got. Make the most of it. So at some time, I'll tell you all the bad things that have happened to my body as a result of smoking. And hopefully, if that can just convince one person, then that would be great. So I'm still dressed up. I went out today and visited with some neighbors, and we're paying rent on a couple of them, and electric bills. And then tomorrow morning, I've got to visit a family that's having a hard time with food. So just feeling like I'm really being sent out there to help people who need God's love, and so just. Gosh, it makes you feel so good when you can get somebody out of trouble and help them and give them a little bit of hope and a little bit of light. Great topic this evening, one I love. Of course, 21 years in the Army, and so I had a little bit of difference. I was looking. I thought I had. Let me check one more place. I just thought of it. I thought I had a picture of an M16 versus an AR-15, and let me see if I can find it here. Where's search? Search. I'm going to look for the selector switch. And so I'm looking for, I have a picture somewhere of an AR-15 and an M16 side by side and showing you the different selector switches so you can tell the difference between the two. That's going to be important as we look at what we're considering as home defense weapons. So nope, not showing it. Okay. Thought I had it, but I don't. But anyhow, the main way you can tell the big difference between an AR-15 and an M16 is the selector switch on the side. On the left-hand side, you use your thumb, and the AR-15, which AR is an abbreviation for Armalite, and that's the name of the company that produced it at first and sold the rights to building that weapon to Colt Manufacturing. So AR-10 was a design that they came up with, and that is in 7.62 millimeter, which is basically a .308 caliber. The Army decided that in Vietnam, they wanted something a little bit lighter weight. They didn't like, a 20-round magazine of 7.62 millimeter. It was quite heavy. And in reality, now a 30-round magazine of 5.56 is about the same weight as a 20-round magazine of 7.62. So you can carry almost 50% more ammunition for the same weight. And of course, the frame was smaller, lighter, and everything else. So the main way you tell the difference between an Armalite Model 15, which is the civilian sporting version, and the military M16 or M4 carbine is on the left-hand side, you have a selector switch. The AR-15 civilian model only has two positions, and that's safe and semi. Okay, semi means that every time you pull the trigger, when you pull the trigger, the hammer is going to go forward, hit the firing pin. Firing pin goes into the back of the bullet. There's a primer in the middle of the bullet, and when it strikes that primer, the primer explodes, sets off a chain reaction, which then ignites the propellant, which is a gunpowder, inside of that bullet, and then that expansion of gases, rapid expansion of gases, pushes the bullet itself out through the muzzle of the weapon. Okay, so an AR-10 or an AR-15 has either safe or semi. Pull the trigger once, it goes out once. You have to let go, pull it back. Now, this is called a recock or a recovery position. So how far you have to let that trigger move forward again until it engages to pull it back to have another bullet go out. That's called recovery time. So, it's different on different weapons. Now, if you look at an M16 or at a car, then or M4, I'm sorry, then what you'll see is you'll have four positions that you have with that thumb switch on the left-hand side, the selector switch. You're going to have safe, which means it can't fire, semi, which we just discussed, burst, which means you pull the trigger once and it automatically shoots out three bullets. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. And then the next position after that is auto, AUTO. And when you switch down to that one, as long as you have the trigger depressed, it will keep firing. So basically a machine gun. Okay. So you pull the trigger and it's going to go rat, tat, 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 tat. As fast as it can recover, it's going to shoot the next bullet out. So that makes it a full automatic weapon or a machine gun in essence. So that's the difference between the military version, which has full auto and burst capabilities, and the civilian weapon, which only has safe and semi-automatic, one pull, one bullet. Okay. You missed me screaming at the top of my lungs, "I hate you, mouse." I started to scroll up, and for some reason, it just kicked me out of the chat. So, Laura Mannion, thank you so much. Holly, you want to know how I quit? I will tell you the truth. I spent so much money on subliminal tapes, on hypnosis. I even got hypnotized. Of course, I had to have a witness go with me because of my security clearance to make sure that I didn't say any secrets while I was hypnotized. gum, you name it. Gosh, if I had all that money, I would be rich. But what got me to quit smoking was I was in the elevator with somebody who had MRSA pneumonia, and I caught it. And I spent 3 weeks in ICU with MRSA pneumonia. And so when you go 3 weeks without a cigarette, you automatically quit, especially when you're in ICU intubated in an ICU. So a combination of the COPD from smoking, plus childhood asthma, plus the MRSA pneumonia, which destroyed about 25% of my lungs. I could be in a little bit better condition, but thank God I'm where I am. I've outlived so many of the guys I was in the service with. So I'm blessed. I'm blessed. I have regrets, but at the same time, I quit and I haven't smoked now for about 6 years. So, things are, no, it's been longer than that. Golly, because I was working at the homeless shelter. Then we bought our store. We had it for 3 years. Then we sold it 3 years ago. I've quit now 7 years ago, 7-8 years ago. So, it has its drawbacks, but at the same time, I'm still alive. So I'm thankful for that. Okay, let's take a look at where we are here. I any kind of encouragement and send me an email if you want to chat about what it takes to quit. I'm no expert at that. Let me tell you, I wasted money for 16 years. But if you need any kind of support, let me know. I'll be happy to give you any kind of support I can give you. Helen quit. And the reason Helen quit was about 5 years ago. Our daughter told her she was not allowed to be around the grandchildren if she continued to smoke. So she quit smoking just so she could be around her grandchildren. So Muskoka Oma's using the nicotine patches and gum. Yeah, I tried that. It didn't work. It's here. More than anything else, it's up here. And so, if you just go to sleep for 3 weeks, don't worry. When you wake up, you don't smoke anymore. So let me see. No, I didn't click on the wrong button. This mouse is just going haywire, and I don't know what it is. Half the time when I touch it, it just does what it wants to do. So that's kind of that. Okay, so let's take a look. Oh, Holly, believe me, I do. Helen and I go to Silver Sneakers 3 times a week. So, exercise. And I have my physical therapy stuff I do for my, what is that? Hip flexor? Yeah, hip flexor muscle. Because those were damaged during my hip replacement surgery. So anyhow, let's get into this. I told you about the difference between an AR-15 and an M16. That's critical. You understand. It does not stand for assault rifle. That is the only time I have seen the term assault rifle appended to a weapon was the Sturmgewehr in World War II, which was the MG-42. It's called a storm weapon, and that's, I guess, where the term comes from. But that was their machine gun, their equivalent to a Tommy gun, and it was formerly called a Sturmgewehr or storm weapon, assault weapon. But other than that, anything else is political makeup. Okay, they're trying to call it. Like today we had a stabbing in Austin, same apartment complex, 2 different apartments, 2 stabbings, and so I'm sure they used assault knives to do that. We need to ban assault knives. Yeah, AR stands for Armalite. That's correct, shenanigans. Okay, so I've got on page 224. Let me get my reading glasses. He says that no matter what, it has to be a versatile weapon. If you can only afford one, you want one that's going to have the most versatility, so you can use it for hunting, for self-defense, for almost anything. Small country stores, he says, take into consideration ammunition. Now, I will bite the bullet. I told everybody that I was, and this was back in December of 2019, and even a little bit before, up through the first 3 to 4 months of 6 months of 2020. I said, I want to have hunting rifles. I am quite certain that they will continue to produce hunting ammunition, 30-06, 30-30, 308, 6 millimeter, 7 millimeter. I was 6.5 Creedmoor. I was certain those calibers would never go away because of the hunting that people, because of the number of hunters in the U.S. and the number of hunting rifles. And I was wrong. Those calibers went away, and what was being produced were the military calibers. So you could find, I could not find 30-30 for 2 years. I missed hunting season for 2 years. You could find 7.62, some 308. Now, those two are interchangeable, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more here in just a bit. 308, 7.62 are basically the same thing. 5.56, 0.223 are basically the same thing. I'll give you some exceptions. And but the military calibers were easy. I could not find 357 ammunition, 357 Magnum. I could find plenty of 9 millimeter. 45 caliber, 45 ACP was difficult during that period. 9 millimeter was widely available. So 40 caliber was kind of sporadic. You could find it, you couldn't find it. But anyhow, he says, and this is, remember, this is before lockdown. Small country stores quite often stock the more popular ammo, like 22 long rifle, absolutely. 308 Winchester, I just talked about that, 30-06, and 12 gauge. Probably won't have that much 264 Win Mag, 300 Weatherby, or 28 gauge. Then he talks about, let me see what Laura says. Oh my goodness. RA, lupus, yada, yada, lets you know, though, when you are, what your true priority, you are absolutely right. You've got to do what you got to do. And, one of the things that I am convinced that I've been put here for a reason. Most of my military buddies are gone. Although Cookie Sewell, one of my favorite guys, I had a dream, I had a dream about Cookie Sewell, who I was with at Fort Riley back from 74, 5, and 6, and Scott Mosier, who was my best friend in high school. And the two of them, these two guys built models like you would not believe, German tanks and stuff like that. These guys, very intricate painting on these models. I mean, they could take a picture of it and convince you that that was an actual World War II object and not a 1/35th scale model. And just, I don't know why, I dreamt about the two of them. I got up this morning and there's a warning on Facebook and it says, today is Cookie's birthday. So happy birthday, Cookie. Oh, by the way, Cookie was one of my mentors. In the military, my first MOS was 98 Bravo, which is a code breaker. And Cookie was my mentor in code breaking. So just love the guy to death. And happy birthday, Cookie. He's a year older than I am. I'm glad you made it, buddy. I am so glad you made it. So anyhow, so that's kind of what the small country stores had. Like I said, I could not find 30-30. But the military calibers you can find. Good cartridges for small game and pest shooting include 22 long rifle, 223 Remington, and the most common shot shells for this use are 410, 20 gauge, and 12 gauge. I think that's a misnomer. That's not the shot shell, that's the caliber, okay? So 410 gauge caliber is very small caliber of a shotgun. 20 gauge is the next, and then 12 gauge is the larger. And there's even a 14 gauge, believe it or not, and a 10 gauge. But anyhow, when you start talking about shot shell, you're talking about the size of the pellets that go into the shot shell and into the shell itself. So like double aught, you're going to have 9 BBs basically inside that shotgun shell. Whereas if you have something like a number 9, you're going to have 27 really small BBs. So that's the difference, is the size of the shot that goes into the shell. And contrary to popular belief, a shotgun is not a blunderbuss. You're not going to have, it's not a kind of aim in the general direction of. You do have to aim it. At 30 yards, a 12 gauge with a full choke, if you're using it for trap, skeet, or birds, is probably going to have a burst radius at 30 feet, 10 yards of maybe 1 foot. Now up closer, it's going to be very, very small. So, it's not a blunderbuss. It's not going to be a point and hope. you've got to really aim it. Let me see. Well, I missed that, and Theoxerus, if your baby's sick, I'm sorry for that as well. I hope, pray for its healing. Bug Out Adventures, welcome. Good evening. Glad to see you. Okay, so he talks about rimfire rifles, of course, 22, and he also recommends a 22 pistol. I will tell you, I have a Ruger LC9, which is a 22 pistol, phenomenal pistol. Absolutely love it. And then rimfire rifles, I have 3. I have the 22. It's a Remington that I got when I was in grade school, in like 7th grade, back in the 60s, early 60s. And I used it up until the time I bought a Remington 1022. And so I have one of the first production batches of the Remington 1022. I guess I should get a newer one. And then I have a Henry lever action 1020. I'm sorry, a Henry lever action 22 rifle. Now, what I like about that is that I can put a scope on it. Whereas the 1022 is before they came out with rails and everything. So there's no scope on it. He talks about centerfire handguns, and he says, he likes the Thompson centerfire G2 Contender. Yes, great weapon. You can change the cylinder, basically change the different calibers of shells that you're firing with it. Just a great gun. So it can accept 22 long rifle, 223, 45 Colt, and I'm sorry, no, it can accept 410 shotgun shells. 223 and 22 long rifle. Okay, so great question, Diana, too, and thank you. That's yes, that's true. But finding the ammunition, especially during the lockdown, was extremely difficult. So what does rimfire versus and what is chambered in mean? Okay, so chambered in just means that you've got this apparatus called the chamber, okay? And so that's your bolt face. So that's your bullet is going to fit inside of there. So it fits very snugly, like a finger inside of a glove, okay? Once it fits inside there, then once you blow, you're essentially going to blow that up like a stick of dynamite, okay? So you want it to be very tight. You want it to be exactly machined to accept that ammunition so that when the bolt, and usually you have spiral locking bolts. So the bolt's going to come up, it's going to get into it, it has some locking pins, it'll lock, and then the firing pin can hit it. And that keeps that bolt from flying back as a result of that explosion and the shell. So now there's only one thing that can happen as a result of that explosion, and that is the bullet that is not firmly, it's tight, but not extremely firmly fit into the ground, okay? The explosion pushes that bullet out the barrel, okay? So the only direction that explosion can go is out the barrel. So chambered means that chamber on the rifle where you're going to put your bullet in is machined to accept whatever it says. So if it says chambered in 223, then it wants you to put a 223 round in there. If it says it's chambered in 5.56, then it wants a 5.56 round. Now, here's the difference, okay? And these two are opposite. I'm going to give you opposites. The 5.56 millimeter ammunition has a little bit, I think it's like 0.01 mils longer throat on the casing than does a .223. It also has a higher chamber pressure. So when you shoot a 5.56, there's a little bit higher pressure inside the explosion than there will be with a .223. And so the 5.56 fits very snugly against the walls if it's chambered for 5.56. If it's a 223, it's a very slightly smaller round than the 5.56. You can put it in there and probably fire 100, 200, 300 times and nothing's going to happen. But eventually that really minute difference in size could cause a rupture, and then that could seize inside of your chamber and not be able to extract the entirety of that shot out shell. Okay, it could also do some damage to your bolt face because the 223 bolt face is not milled to accept the amount of pressure from the 5.56. So you can fire 223 in a 5.56, but you can but shouldn't fire 223 in a 5.56. No, well, let me get you should not fire 5.56 in a 223. The 5.56 is the heavier round. Now it's just the opposite when we talk about 7.62 and 308. 308 actually is a stronger round than the 7.62 NATO. Okay, so the same thing. If it's chambered in 308, no problem. Shoot away. Either one's 308 or 7.62 If it's chambered in 7.62 NATO, you don't want to fire too many 308s in there. Okay, so but they are 99% interchangeable. How's that? Okay, I hope that answers your question on that one. Now, what was the rest of that question? And rim fire versus center fire. So with the center fire, if you take a look at it, the bullet, if you look at the bottom of it, you've got a little hole right here in the middle, and it looks brassy. So that is the primer. So that's what your hammer, your firing pin is going to strike. Your hammer hits the firing pin, or a striker hits the firing pin, either one, and the firing pin then makes contact with that very small brassy looking thing in the middle of that round, and that is your primer. So that it's designed so that once it has great pressure, it explodes, and then it ignites the gunpowder that's in the rest of the bullet or in the rest of the round. With 22, it's called a rim fire because there is no center percussion. Okay, what they did was they took that same material basically and lay it if you stand the bullet up like this, they pour it in kind of and let it melt, and then adhere to the bottom of the round, which becomes the face. So that when you stick it in, the entire bottom here is that percussive thing, so that the rim fire, instead of hitting in the middle, its firing pin is going to hit off to the edge. So anywhere on that edge that you hit, it's going to cause that inside to have that impact and explode and set off the gunpowder that's inside that round. So that's the difference between the two. Center fire, you have to have a blasting cap, basically, a percussion cap in the center of it in order to fire. A rim fire, you do not. I hope that made it a little bit less confusing for you. Sometimes I can get a little bit verbose. I apologize for that. So he says what he personally carries is he carries an M1911 Colt stainless steel gold cup, which is a 45 ACP. Now, ACP is auto chambered pistol, which is different than the Colt 45, which was designed for the revolver pistol. Okay, so anytime you see ACP, that means that it's going to be an automatic pistol. Now, another term is used when you're talking about 9mm. Instead of ACP, what you may see is 9mm Luger, because they were the ones that really made it famous in World War I and World War II. So the Luger design of the 9mm is ACP. And then everybody kind of copied that afterwards. Okay, so let me see. For rifles, he likes a lightweight rifle chambered in .223 Remington. .223 Remington, probably the mainstay is going to be your Mini 14, Ruger Mini 14. I bought my Mini Ruger 14 in 1982 at a store that no longer exists. It was called Gibson's in San Angelo, Texas. And so once again, this is one of those initial runs of the Mini 14. So I don't have the fancy rails and everything else that can accept everything. I can put a sight on it. It is drilled for a telescopic sight. I don't have one on it. Just you have the iron sights. But the Mini 14 is basically, they took the M14. So history. In World War II, we had the M1 Garand that fired the 30-06 round. It had an 8-round clip, Okay, so the difference between a clip and a magazine, the clip, I want to use that as a. So if you take a clip, what you've got is you fold a piece of metal like this, okay, and then your rounds sit in like this, okay. So you had 8 rounds stuck in like this, okay, with the bullet with the projectile sticking up like this. Then you take that and you put it this way, so that now your bullets are this way, and they go. You put this entire clip inside of the weapon. Now that means that if you're going to push them up, the weapon itself has to have the spring and the mechanism that's going to push it up inside of the weapon so that it's in alignment with the bolt, so that when the bolt can push it back into the chamber. Okay, so that's a clip. That's why some of us get a little bit obtuse when people refer to magazines as clips. A clip has no spring and cannot push any rounds or anything on its own. It's 3-sided. The rounds are stuck into it. It is dependent upon the spring mechanism inside the weapon to put the next round up in order for the bolt to carry it forward and chamber it. A magazine, on the other hand, is called a box magazine. It looks just like a box, and it's got one opening on the top. So it's got an internal spring. So when you push your ammunition down inside of it, you're compressing that spring, and that spring inside the magazine itself. So every magazine has its own spring, pushes that round up as it moves into position for the bolt to carry it forward and put it into the chamber. So that's the difference between the M1 clip and the M16 box magazine. Okay. So the M1 Garand, they wanted improvement on it. So they wanted to do away with the 30-06. NATO wanted to standardize at the 7.62 by 51. So we came out with the M14, which was basically taking all the mechanisms of the M1. The other thing they wanted to do was they wanted to have a magazine instead of a clip. So because, the clip, you only had 8 rounds, you put your thumb in there, and if you weren't careful, you got what they called M1 thumb. The bolt would smash your thumb against the chamber if you didn't get out of the way quick enough when you were seating around. M1 was one World War II for us, but it could use some improvements. And the M14 was those improvements. And the M14 didn't kick quite as much as the M1. The M1 was 30-06. The M14 was 7.62 by 51. And so it was a little bit better weapon. It got replaced by the M16 because we needed something a lot lighter, carry a lot more ammunition in the jungle. And so they referred to the M16 as Mattel Corporation, the M, because they said it was a toy compared to everything else. The original, the very first M16s until they came out with the M16A1 were, they were prone to failures. They had some problems with the end of the barrel. They made several modifications when they came out with the M16A1. I carried the M16A1 for 21 years. I love it. It's a great weapon, and I really can't speak badly against it. They've improved that. They've shortened the barrel, turned it into a carbine basically instead of a rifle, and now that's the M4. So, a little bit different. And now they did away with the carrying handle, and instead they have a red dot sight, and they have a 6x telescopic sight. I mean, there's lots of improvements on it. I love that carrying handle. I'll tell you, I love the carrying handle. But, life moves on. He also recommends taking a look at getting a 22 long rifle over 410 combination. So that's a Savage, I think, makes a survival rifle. It's 22 on the bottom, 410 gauge shotgun on top. Then they also have a 20 gauge version of that. 22 Magnum and 410, 22 Magnum and 20 gauge. But unless you're going to be bugging out, and that's going to be, you want something you can carry one weapon with 2 different calibers and have diversity of use. I said probably that's not going to be for you. He recommends getting a bolt action long range rifle, a 308 Winchester or 30-06. I agree. I think so. My hunting rifles, I have a Remington 700 chambered in 308. In my opinion, best hunting rifle in the market. Okay. My second best hunting rifle is my Ruger Gunsight Scout. It's a little bit shorter. I have night vision scope on it. It is also bolt action, whereas the Remington has an internal magazine. The Ruger has a box magazine, so you can have either a 5, 15, or 20 round box magazine. So you can just keep on firing and then change the magazine and keep on firing. I have that set up with a night scope. That's my pig hunting rifle. Do I have another 308? No, but I do have a 6.5 Creedmoor. So I have a 6.5 Creedmoor, and that's also a great hunting rifle. That's what I consider to be my long range rifle. That's one of the flattest shooting rifles on the market. It's just wonderful and great scope on it. I was some friends, Benny and Johnny. Johnny was with 10th Special Forces Group, and Benny was with the Austrian Special Forces. And the conversation was about scopes, and they say, get an adequate gun and spend more money on your scope. Learn how to fire on iron scopes, and then upgrade your scope. Any money you save not getting a high quality rifle, get a medium quality rifle, and then invest the rest in scopes. And I kind of have a tendency to agree with that. Let me see where we are. Catch up on chat here. I have a pain pill that every once in a while I have to take to get to sleep, and and I have some weird dreams when I'm on it, so that's why I don't like taking it that much. Great, I'm glad that explanation helped. Let me catch up here. Deja vu, yeah. Isn't that something? It's funny how that works. Things just kind of, hey, KPP, then welcome. Bug Out Adventures, welcome. Great to see you. Tuck by V, good evening. Welcome to see you as well. Let me see. Yeah, Holly, I'm too old to bug out too. That's not my primary plan. I have everything if I need to. I don't want to. I don't plan to. I'm at the point to where my daughter asked me what I wanted for Christmas one year. I told her I wanted one of those garden tractors that you could get at Academy, and so I have a garden tractor to put my bug out bag in. And then if that doesn't work, then I also got the 2-wheel dollies. You can move things around, freight and stuff like that. So that's how I'm going to carry my bug out bag if I have to bug out. I'm not going to carry it on my shoulders. I'm too old for that. I'm going to try to hunker down as long as possible. Okay, looks like I'm pretty much caught up. Okay. So he talks about one of the things that he likes the most is the 410 because just it's a single shot shotgun, very inexpensive, lightweight. You can break it down, put it in your bug out bag, great weapon. So here's let me tell you. That's his next. His battery, or what he recommends everybody have a bolt action long range hunting rifle in either 308 or 30-06. And I would add to that 6.5 Creedmoor. I think that's a good round. Now, 6.5 Creedmoor is probably the most expensive round in the market as far as the hunting rounds right now. But I think all three of those will be commonly available and ready to shoot. I would say that you can probably also, although it's not quite a long range gun, is a 30-30. I have a 30-30, and that's my primary deer rifle. So simply because here in the bush, you aren't going to have long range shots. So a 12 gauge pump shotgun with 2 barrels, a longer barrel basically for bird hunting and a shorter barrel for defense. And so I like the Remington 870. I also like the Winchester. Is it Winchester? No, Mossberg 500. So the Remington 870 and the Mossberg 500 are both phenomenal platforms. And I would say either one of those two is going to make a great shotgun for you, whether you want it for bird hunting or for home defense. Depending on you, I can honestly say I don't personally think there's that much of a difference between the 12 gauge and the 20 gauge. Now, what I would recommend is if you are older, if you are female and you don't want the kick and the lack of control with a 12 gauge, go with a 20. You're not going to have the same amount of kick or anything else. You'll still have close to, but not quite the same power in your shooting. So, if you're older or if you're female, 20 gauge will do you fine. Don't worry about getting a 12 gauge. Although you will see women shooting 12 gauge in trap and skeet all the time. So please don't take that as a belittling statement. I'm just saying for comfort. My comfort, I guess I know how to shoot it, so I can do either one. A 22 long rifle and a 45 automatic pistol. Now so let me take this as a chance to tell you about what I carry. So my primary concealed carry weapon is a Smith & Wesson M&P shield. So it's a small concealed 9mm pistol that's on my right hip. Occasionally, I have a Glock 21 45 caliber that I carry cross draw on my left side. Now, the reason I carry it cross draw is Stephen Smith. And we had a discussion once, and he says, look, Lee, if you're standing with somebody and you have your arms folded, right? And so you realize that it's about to get real difficult between you and him. Think about the action of pulling this hand and then drawing and coming up, okay? So that's an awful lot of motion to do that. Whereas if you're already cross-armed and you're carrying cross-body holster, all you have to do is take this arm, pull, and you're ready, okay? So he convinced me to have one cross draw at all times. So I have a cross draw Glock 21, which is a 45 caliber. So I carry a 45 caliber and a 9mm. Now, if it's not going to be a concealed carry, then I'm probably going to do away with my Smith & Wesson M&P shield, and I'll switch over to my Ruger Security 9. Now, the reason I carry a Ruger Security 9 is something you might want to consider. And that is that I was really enthralled with Ruger back when I was in high school, my junior year in high school. And I think it was called the Red Hawk. It might have been the Black Hawk. But 1968, 67, 68, 69, they came out with a Wild West pistol caliber carbine. And so you could get I think it was the Black Hawk, 44 Magnum Black Hawk pistol with a 6-inch barrel and a carbine that was chambered in the exact same thing. So you used your pistol round to put in that carbine. So you had a rifle and a pistol with the exact same caliber, okay? Used the exact same ammunition. I thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen in my life. So right now, Ruger makes what they call a PCC, which is a pistol caliber carbine. And so it's basically, and the reason is stupidly, during the automatic weapons ban back in it was the early 2000s. I had a legal single shot Uzi carbine, 9mm. I love that gun, but I turned it in because it had been outlawed under the automatic weapons ban, even though it was a semi-automatic weapon. And I shouldn't have. Stupid me. But anyhow, so I wanted to replace that. Uzis are doggone expensive nowadays. I think I paid $185 for it when I bought it back in the early 80s. And now, you can't get one for less than $2,000. But the pistol caliber carbine, it's a little bit heavier. I will say that. It's heavier than an AR-15. But it does accept the it does accept the Ruger Security 9 magazines, and then it has an adapter where it can also accept the Glock 19 magazines. So if you get the pistol caliber carbine and you have either a Glock 19 or a Ruger Security 9, you've got basically one size magazine, one size ammunition, two different weapons, and everything's interchangeable. So that's what I like about that. So that's an option for you as well. Shotgun, definitely 12 or 20 gauge, a long rifle, 308, 6.5 Creedmoor. Either one of those two is going to do you extremely well. I think both those calibers will be available. And I say 308 because remember, that's the one that's going to have the stronger chambering. And so you can accept the NATO 7.62 in a 308. You're probably going to want a combat type rifle. And for that, you're going to want either the Ruger Mini 14, which is 223, or an AR platform, which is going to be the 5.56. You can get an AK, and an AK is going to be in the 7.62 38, which is the shorter commie version of 7.62. Okay. I'm not sure how available the ammunition is going to be, but it's a very simple weapon to maintain. Let me catch up here. Please don't take me out. Thank you. Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm reading, and I've been told I should not do that, and I should not be quiet during the reading. So there's a 7mm. Firearms has a 7mm. I have a friend who swears by 7mm. She used to be a competition shooter. No, I'm sorry, she shot 6mm. She said that 6mm was just a beautiful competition shooting weapon, and but yeah, 7mm is supposed to be very, very good as well. I've heard some good things. I've heard some bad things about the 10mm pistol. On the other hand. Yeah, so old levers, Firearms, yes, in 30-30 and 308. Let me tell you, here's Lee's prejudices in lever action rifles. The Winchester has a tube, and you have to load your ammo from the tube, from the front of the weapon, basically, down that tube. Okay. Then when you cock it with the lever, it ejects out the top. So with the Winchester, because it ejects out the top, you can't have a telescopic sight on it. And if you are using it for a combat weapon, then you got to stick it out. You run out of ammo. You got to pull it back in and then start loading down the end of the tube. I don't like that. Okay. What I would like to have is a rifle where you can feed it from the side, eject from the side, have a scope on top. Okay. So then I took a look at Henry. Henry had the same problem, except you load it from the front with a tube, and then it ejects through the side. We're getting better. Now you can put a scope on it, but you still have to pull it back, unscrew that tension rod, put your ammo in, put the tension rod back in, and screw it on. Now, Henry in the last 2 or 3 years found out that people don't like that, so they've started the side loading and side ejecting, which is great for Henry, but it's a little bit more expensive. Marlin, on the other hand, has always had side loading, side ejecting. So I have a Marlin 30-30, and that's what I use for hunting because now I can have a scope on it. I don't have to worry about loading it weirdly or anything else. I just put them in the side, and it ejects out the side, and I'm a happy camper or a happy hunter, whichever way you want to put it. So let alone pepper, if you're worried about shoulder injury, then I'm going to recommend for you an AR-15. When I went to basic training, one of the very first things that the drill sergeant did on the firing range was he put the AR-15 in his crotch, put it on full auto, and pulled the trigger. And he let 20, at that time all we had was 20 round magazines. He let 20 rounds rip with the butt of that stock in his crotch and did not flinch a bit. That's how much they kick. So if you're worried about, if you want something that's going to be suitable for almost every need and does not kick and won't injure your shoulder when you're firing, please get an AR-15, an AR-15 platform. Okay, Ruger AR-15 is not a bad weapon to start or a bad weapon to have, and it's cost effective. I would say you might want to even consider that starting there. Don't worry about those multi-$1,000 platforms like Keltec and everybody else. Tuck by V, in my construction days, I was able to hold a 30-06 like a pistol, one-handed, and I could fire 2 12 gauges at once. Well, you're better than I am. After a day at the skeet range, I would hurt. Well, not hurt, just be tender. Let's put it that way. Yeah, Shenanigans has Remington 30-06. I don't have any 30-06s. I have 308, 6.5, 30-30, 5.56, 223, and 22 long rifle. That's it. Yes, that is true. And that's just happened in the last 2 years, I think, that Marlin was bought out by Ruger. So now Marlin weapons are made by Ruger. Yeah, there's a move afoot to outlaw 30-round magazines, but I think you can check me on this. I watch Armed Scholar, and I believe the Supreme Court just struck down a prohibition on 30-round magazines. So check on that. Just verify it. Don't accept my word. Always do research. So storing guns and magazines. What he says here that he recommends you not store your magazines loaded. I'll tell you, we kept our magazines loaded all the time, especially in a combat zone, and you want them loaded all the time, and we didn't have any problems. Now, what I do is I don't load them with, if it's a 20-round magazine, I only put 18 in there. I don't put in all 20. So, and I've never had one misfire. So, let me see. He recommends rim oil and brake-free CLP. Brake-free CLP is going to be your cleaning agent, and then rim oil is going to be your lubricant. And so, yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with both of those. Brake-free is what you get issued to you in your maintenance kit in the Army. And we don't worry about the lube because we get a little bit of a bottle, but I don't know what it was. It probably could have been rim oil, but we don't lube it as much because basically the brake-free is going to leave a lubricating film on it. Make sure you get plenty of firearms practice. How much ammunition should you store? He recommends that you have 2,000 rounds per battle rifle, 500 per hunting rifle, 800 per handgun, 2,000 22s, and 500 per shotgun. So I don't know how those numbers were derived or any significance of them. I will tell you, be conscious of any restrictions that you may have by your insurance company on how much ammunition you store. There was a police officer here in Round Rock, and his house caught on fire, and he had a reloading station inside his house, and he had cases and cases of ammunition that blew up. And so when they filed for the insurance claim to replace the house because of the fire and blowing up, they said, no, you had more ammunition than is covered in your insurance policy. And so you would not have had as extensive damage to your home if you had not had that ammunition, and you didn't declare it, didn't pay the extra premiums on it. Therefore, we're not going to pay you for your house. And so he didn't have any insurance on his house at all. He gives a list of fantastic companies to buy from. Then he talks about night vision scopes. I've shown you my night vision scopes. I have 2 of them. No, I have 3. I didn't show you the one that's mounted on my Ruger Gunsight Scout. But I also recommend, this is my O-Light. I'm going to point it behind me. So this rail fits underneath the barrel of either your pistol or your rifle, whichever one you want. And this was about $180. So it's got a little toggle switch here on the bottom. So it hangs like this. So this, I'm going to show you for the top. It's got a toggle switch, and the toggle switch has 3 positions. You can either have light, no, that's laser only, laser and light, or light only. So you put it to where you want it to go. So I'm going to put this over here to light. Now it's hanging underneath your weapon like this. So on each side, there's a little tab, and you can turn it, and you can just push it down, and that does that, right? So now I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to put it to laser. So then this is the laser. Okay. And then you can do both. So it's got light and laser, so that wherever that laser is pointing, if you have your weapon zeroed, that's where that bullet's going to go. Now, one of the things I can say is if you use a green laser instead of a red laser, chances are that person is going, or somebody in that group is going to see a laser pointed at them or hitting them on the body. They're going to point that out, and they probably won't be as difficult to work with as before. You could do the same thing with just a plain flashlight. Now, one of the disadvantages to having this mounted on your weapon, okay, so I have a laser on my Olight Arcfeld, same kind of laser. And I like to have it because I can hold it off to the side and use it as either a flashlight or a laser. That way, if they try to zero in with counter sniper and shoot at that light, they aren't shooting at my face or anything with through a night scope or anything like that. So that's just a thought you might want to get at. It talks about selecting and assembling web gear. He talks about body armor. I don't have any body armor. I'm not going to buy any body armor. I will tell you, though, however, because of the amount of people who do have body armor, I'm going to aim above the throat and below the waist, because the body armor protects between the waist and the chest. So knowing that that's where it protects, I'm going to aim elsewhere. So Lord Tachanka says that the gas block won't move back far enough to chamber the next round with 7.62 in some 308, right? And that makes sense because the 7.62 is a lower pressure round than the 308. That makes sense. Archery is a fantastic, and although it's quieter than a weapon, it's not totally silent. People may think it's totally silent, but it's not. That string snaps like you would not believe. I got into archery when I was younger as well. I'm considering whether or not to buy a crossbow, but I just can't justify the expense right now. I do have a slingshot, however, with a whisker adapter on it that allows you to use your slingshot just like a bow. And so, that whisker thing in the middle, you lay your arrow inside it, then you pull back on your slingshot just as if, and it's just the same thing basically as a bow, and let go, and then of course it launches your arrow. So it goes through that center aperture. And you can get that at Dave Canterbury's store, Self-Reliant Outfitters. Canes, walking sticks, and umbrellas for self-defense. I think I've shown you my walking stick is actually a fighting stick. It's not a walking stick, it's a cane. It is an actual fighting stick. There's American Cane Fighting Institute, which I was a member of. And so mine has, a larger handle, the crook. It does have a grapple on the end. It's an octagonal barrel so that you can use it. It has some gouges in it so you can do some scraping and things like that. So it is an actual fighting cane. However, it's also an AMA recognized medical device. So you can carry it on aircraft. So that's the advantage to a cane. A walking stick, however, is not recognized as a medical device. So if you have a walking stick, you may not be able to get it on board of an aircraft. Knives, knives are knives. So that pretty much concludes that chapter. And let's see where we are next week. And then I'll catch up with your chat. Okay, so next week is Get Out of Dodge Vehicles and the dreaded trip out of Dodge. So how to plan your escape. Okay, so that's what we'll be talking about next week. I do have good news. Both of my autographed books have come in. So this is going to be, and I'll put the links down in the comments down below. This is John Grammer, and he will be with us. August, I believe it's 29th is the Thursday, the last Thursday of the month. So we will be reviewing this book on the last Thursday of August. John Grammer, the author, will be with us once again as we discuss this book. And then in the last Thursday of September, we'll be honored to have Stephen C. Smith back. And I have his volume 7 out of his Stonemont series on Wings Like Eagles. So this will be our September book. So we've got August and September. Okay. So I'll put the links. I may even put down the links for this entire series, the entire Stonemont series, so that if you have not read the first 6 volumes, you can catch up. I'll put both volumes for this series so that if you want to catch up with it as well. I have decided I'm going to give away my Bradbury 10-volume fiction series, survival fiction series, as a gift when we get to 10,000 subscribers. So help me get there, and then as soon as that happens, I'll be giving that away as well. Shenanigans has a brother who has a cane with a blade in it. Yeah, that's called a cane sword. That can be seen on X-ray, and they don't like that on aircraft at all. But yeah, that was very common in the South during the pre-bellum and post-bellum era. So, little known prepper. Helen was in a real bad car wreck, okay? And she broke her left ulna in 3 places. And so it is still is not connected. This bone right here still has not healed and is not connected. So she has very weak forearm, basically, in her left arm. And then the seatbelt severed her bicep. So 2/3 of her bicep is just hanging. And they say that the amount of pain that she'd have to go through to reattach the bicep is not worth the gain that she'll get from it. So she can only lift like a maximum of 10 pounds with her arm right now. And that's after exercise. So I had bought her a 9mm, and she was okay racking it until the car wreck. And then with the car wreck, she can't rack it at all. So Smith & Wesson now has a version of the M&P out, and it's called the EZ, Echo Zulu. So that is basically going to have a less strong return spring, and she could very easily cock that, no problem. So, but also she has a hard time pushing. So if you imagine you're holding the pistol here and you're trying to cock it by pushing the slide, try, instead of pushing the slide, hold the slide firm and push the bottom, the base of the pistol. And that's worked well for her as far as being able to chamber around a lot more effectively. Let me see. So one of the things, it totally depends, Holly. It totally depends. If you are in an urban area, then I would say yes, you're probably going to need real good scopes. I'm going to say here in an urban, suburban area, probably you can get by with a 6x scope, and that's probably all you're going to need, nothing more than 6 magnification. Because I don't think you're going to be engaging anybody at any distances that are going to require any greater magnifications than a 6x. Let me see. Okay, so Tuck by V rented an EZ at the range last year, so great. What'd you think of it? Okay. Well, great, little known prepper. Yeah, so Theoxorus is recommending a 44 Magnum. Remember that famous line in all of the Clint Eastwood Magnum movies. Well, how many rounds did he shoot? Did he shoot 5 or did he shoot 6? All you got to ask yourself is one question: do I feel lucky? Well, seeing as how this is a 44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world, all you have to ask yourself is one question: do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk? But anyhow, yeah, 44 Magnum is one heck of a weapon. So I will tell you, before we got married, I took Helen out to the range and I let her shoot my Uzi. So of course you've got about 7 pounds of metal, and it's a fairly heavy, relatively heavy for what it was, a blowback bolt weapon. And just a wonderful weapon, though. She fired it relatively little kick because you've got a pistol round, you got all that weight to absorb it. So at that time, I had a Smith & Wesson Model 59, which and it was an aluminum frame, and it had plastic hand grips. It was a very light pistol. And so I said, now this is the exact same caliber round that you're going to put in this pistol. However, the pistol only weighs 3.5 pounds compared to 7 pounds for the Uzi. So it's going to kick a lot more because there's not as much weight to absorb it. And so we got her in position. She pulled the trigger and bam, she had a hammer right in the middle of her forehead. She hasn't fired a pistol since then. So, be careful. Just a little bit of advice, on how you handle things. And even the same round in 2 different weapons is going to handle differently. That was way back in 1983 that happened. Okay. So with that, I think we're pretty much done. Thanks everybody for being here. Thank you for cooperating. Thank you for the great discussion in chat. I love how you guys are so helpful to each other. That really makes for everything. And for all you new people who are joining us for the first time, thank you and welcome aboard. Glad to have you here. And so what we typically do is on Monday nights, we have something different. I have confirmed with Michelle Mitten Prepper, that we are going to be talking Monday night about homeopathic medicinal items to have for post-apocalyptic world. So, things like essential oils and herbs and things like that, basically medical substitutes. So she's going to be talking about homeopathic medicine and herbs and spices and oils and everything else. So that'll be Monday night. Tuesday night, we'll be doing chapter 12, the Get Out of Dodge Vehicle for this. And then the last Thursday of the month, we have our fiction book club. So for August, we're going to be doing John Grammer's fiction book, Volume 2, United. This takes place in the Pacific Northwest. And then in September, we're going to be doing Stephen Smith's Stonemont Series, Volume 7, On Wings of Eagles. And this takes place in eastern Kansas, southwestern Missouri, Ozark area. He is very attuned to the area right around Branson, Missouri. So he has a cabin down in that area. So you're going to see a lot of his knowledge being spread between eastern Kansas down into Branson, Missouri area. But really great reading. So with that, remember that we're all in this together. So we can come out the other side together. Numbers chapter 6, verse 24 says, the Lord be with you and bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you kindly and grant you peace. So remembering that we are all in this together. Thank you for being kind, polite, and respectful to each other, because we're only going to get through this by helping each other. Take care, everybody. Thank you for being here. Have a wonderful evening. And I made it without coughing too much. And let me see. Let's do it. Let's do an oxygen check before I go to bed. Oh, wow. Look at that. 95, 94. So I'm happy. All right. Okay, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.